What's happening, everybody? It is 1 o'clock on Wednesday. 1 o'clock on Wednesday usually means one thing and one thing only, and that is a new episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Thomas, coming to you live today, this Wednesday, another weekly episode of the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, a preview and prediction episode, if you will, in regards to the biggest rematch in the recent history of boxing. But I think, for my money, one of the biggest fights in general in the sport of boxing within the last 15, 20 years. Boxing has had its peaks and valleys. Boxing has had its popular matchups. Boxing has had its lulls. There's no doubt about that. Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, though, that fight in and of itself will be a fight that fans have been waiting for. The rematch in particular, the fight originally, I think the fascinating part about this rematch is that the first fight, while fans were excited for it, while most fans, myself included, were amped up for it, I think this rematch, we didn't know how great the first fight would be. You're always kind of throwing a dart at a dartboard, hoping that it hits the bullseye with certain matchups, in particular with Wilder and Fury. And the reason I say that is because during the first fight, there were a lot of question marks with Tyson Fury, his mental state, his condition. He was going through a lot of stuff mentally, and was at one point contemplating suicide. I mean, very serious stuff. For him to be able to come back from that, a 3-year hiatus, get back into the fight shape that he needed to be in for that fight, and to fight as well as he did, was a true testament to the man that is Tyson Fury, the Gypsy King. On the other side of the coin, you have Deontay Wilder, who is one of the best pure power punchers in the sport of boxing, and arguably in the history of the sport since George Foreman and since Mike Tyson in the heavyweight division. So you had that narrative, but you didn't really know how great that first fight would be. And to see it play itself out the way that it did, how it did, in order for us to get this blockbuster rematch. This is one of the biggest fights in recent boxing history. And before I give you guys my keys to victory on the fight, I would like to answer some questions that were left for me on my Instagram. Every other day, seemingly, I try to make it every other day, but once or twice a week at the very least, I try to take fan questions from the viewers, from the listeners of the show, and I want to be more active in doing that. I want to give back to the viewers and to the listeners. Plus, I enjoy the questions that are asked. So when I dive into these questions here, and we go, into some of these questions, I'm assuming that some of these questions will not be boxing related, but the ones that are, I will answer them, and the ones that aren't, I will answer them anyway. So here we go. First question, which was left by T. Prin, is who is the greatest heavyweight boxer ever? Now, that is a really tough question to answer. I mean, obviously, the greatest would be Muhammad Ali as far as heavyweight boxing. But I always like to play fantasy matchmaker, and I always like to say, who could have beat Muhammad Ali? Well, Muhammad Ali lost more than a handful of times. Lost 5-6 times in his career, if my memory serves me right. So, Frazier, he lost to Holmes. I believe, who else did he lose to? Here I am talking about the GOAT, arguably the GOAT, and I don't even know this dude's record. That should not happen. That is my mistake. I mean, he had 5 losses. Naming those losses, I mean, that's pretty tough. I know he lost to Leon, or did he? Yeah, he lost to Larry Holmes, lost to Leon Spinks. Who's the last guy that he fought? Trevor Berbick? And then there was Frazier, and then there was Ken Norton. The Ken Norton fight was a split decision that he later avenged. So, that was a massive fight. But yeah, Muhammad Ali ranks up there. Mike Tyson ranks up there. In terms of heavyweights, I would say Joe Frazier. Those guys obviously rank. George Foreman ranks up there as well. He got the belt back at a later stage in his career. But probably Ali, in terms of his boxing prowess, I would say Ali for that one. Should the Buffalo Bills re-sign Shaq Lawson? Now, this is the next question that I knew I would receive, and as I look through these questions, I know that some of them won't be boxing questions, but I know that some of them will be boxing questions, and this one obviously falls under a football question. Should the Bills re-sign Shaq Lawson? Should they? I would think so, but will they? That remains to be seen. And it remains to be seen due to the fact that they have to come to an agreement on a set salary, bonus, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. It has to be between the Bills and Shaq Lawson. Shaq Lawson's got to sign on the bottom line after all. So whether they should or shouldn't kind of doesn't really matter. I mean, I think that the Bills will try to re-sign Shaq Lawson. I just don't know if they will actually come to an agreement. Who's the World Series favorite? World Series favorite for me would probably be the LA Dodgers. They've been knocking on the door for the last few years, robbed of World Series titles against the Houston Astros. So I would like to think the Dodgers with Mookie Betts in the lineup will be listed as a World Series favorite, at least in the NL. And the AL, I would give it to the love 'em or hate 'em New York Yankees. Next question, fantasy baseball related. Who would you take first overall in a fantasy baseball draft and why? Now, I made a hint to my answer to this question as far as who I would take first overall and who I wouldn't take first overall. Believe it or not, as great as Mike Trout is, I would avoid taking him first overall in every single draft, every single season. I think somewhere along the way we have to say to ourselves, well, Mike Trout's really good. Mookie Betts is really good. Ronald Acuna is really good. Christian Yelich is really good. Which one of those guys would you really want to build your team around? And Trout is the most obvious name because he's the biggest name in the sport, and he's labeled as the best player in the world for a reason. But we're not talking about real on-field ability. We're talking about fantasy baseball, category for category. Who is the guy that provides you value in every single category? And I would honestly go Ronald Acuna. The Atlanta Braves have come out and they've said that Ronald Acuna is going to be the leadoff hitter for the Atlanta Braves. He's going to play leadoff quite often. I would assume that Ronald Acuna is going to get the wheels taken off of him, training wheels taken off him, and he's going to be running wild in that Atlanta Braves lineup hitting leadoff. Who should Donald Cerrone fight next? Honestly, if it were me, I would hope that Cerrone would retire, but I know he's not going to. I know Donald is a tough, stingy fighter and is going to keep going until his wheels fall off. And I would assume that he will get a fight sometime later this year, and I would assume it's going to be a barn burner matchup, maybe a Carlos Condit, maybe Michael Chiesa, somebody like that. Somebody that's decent but not in the title ranks. Chiesa's slowly climbing up the title ranks, but you know what I mean, as far as a name that would attract, viewers. Dude, next question. Guy says, dude, you really think Joe Burrow won't go to Cincy? Well, I posted today on my Instagram story. You can check it out at Ryan Thomas Take. It says, if Joe Burrow spurns the Bengals, he wouldn't be the first player to reject the team that drafted him. John Elway rejected the Baltimore Colts to play for Denver. Bo Jackson rejected Tampa Bay to play for the Raiders. Eli Manning rejected the San Diego Chargers, the then San Diego Chargers, to play for the New York Giants. And I mentioned the fact that Jim Kelly spurned the Buffalo Bills to go play in another football league. That'd be like if Joe Burrow said to the Bengals, hey, I don't want to play for the Bengals, but I'll play in the XFL. That's what Jim Kelly did. He went to the USFL for 3 years instead of going to Buffalo, and ultimately made his path in Buffalo. So that was, my answer to that question. Do not be shocked. Do not be mystified by anything. Bills Stadium, where do you want it? I actually like the Bills Stadium right where it is in Orchard Park, if they could somehow renovate it to where it had somewhat of a dome or even a spot that was open, kind of like some of the stadiums that we see today, even in some of the warmer climates. I would like that. I drive by the stadium sometimes when I go down to my brother's house in Orchard Park, and it's right down the street. And I think to myself, man, it would be really nice if the Buffalo Bills had a dome. I think their season tickets would go up. I think the attendance would go up as well, just in general, no matter what time of year. And I think that would be a pretty awesome thing. It would be a multi-purpose event center. You wouldn't be able to just have concerts there in the summer. You could have concerts there all year round. It would be very convenient for the Buffalo area, which is looking to expand and get bigger and really do some smart renovating within the area. So that's that. The whole adage about how Buffalo should have their stadium in Buffalo, I think that was a cute idea for a little while, but I definitely think it's one that has kind of fallen on some deaf ears due to the fact that if you've actually been to downtown Buffalo, the traffic down there is terrible, and it would really be a mess. So there you have it. So those are the questions that I received, and you can submit more questions to me on my Instagram at Ryan Thomas Take for all things sports, for all questions that will be answered live on the Thomas Take Sports podcast. So let's get right to it. Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury. As I said from the top, I'm very much looking forward to this fight, but I'm very much looking forward to heading down to Amherst Alehouse Saturday night with my colleagues at Trainwreck Sports and host a pre-fight show, be a part of a pre-fight show where I will be microphone in hand talking all about Deontay Wilder, talking all about Tyson Fury. And obviously, we'll be diving into Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder a little bit on this podcast today. So, podcast for the fans to listen to today throughout the remaining few days left in the week, and a podcast live show, I guess you could say, at Amherst Alehouse with the boys at Trainwreck Sports, myself included, being a member of Trainwreck Sports. And we'll be talking about all things Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. But on this episode of the Thomas Take Sports podcast, I am going to provide you with my preview and prediction, as I always like to say, for this fight. Now, when talking to Baby Joe Macy last week on 47-Foot Takeover, it was one of those things that I had always imagined doing. I had always imagined talking with, interviewing Baby Joe Macy, and to get that off my list, cross that off the list, was really amazing, was really a thankful experience for me. And a lot of the questions that we talked about in previewing Wilder and Fury were the styles of Deontay Wilder and the style of Tyson Fury. And something that Baby Joe Macy said during the interview is that if I were to guess who would Baby Joe Macy rather fight, who would it be? Would it be Wilder or Fury? And I said Wilder. And Baby Joe Macy said that I was right. He said, that's right, I would much rather fight Wilder. And the reasons that he went on, I won't dive into because I want you guys to tune into that. That's on the Trainwreck Sports Spotify and Apple Podcasts profile. But a lot of his reasons for that were very similar to thoughts that I have had about Deontay Wilder and about Tyson Fury prior to their first fight and even after their first fight. Look, folks, this is a fight between Deontay Wilder, who is arguably one of the hardest-hitting power punchers in heavyweight boxing history. Deontay Wilder is one of those fighters that burst onto the scene with relatively little to no pro boxing experience and was knocking dudes out left and right. This guy has a God-given gift in his right hand and his left hand in terms of power. Some guys have it. Some guys are gifted with it. The Mike Tysons of the world, the Conor McGregors of the world. Others, they don't have it. Chael Sonnen, for example, in the world of mixed martial arts back when he was fighting. I bet you if Chael Sonnen had some power in his hands, he would have been a world beater with his wrestling capability, but his lack of power, in his hands, he really could only grapple and wanted to grapple right out of the gate because he knew that his punches were not really the hardest in the world. Guys like Dan Henderson, with these wrestling gifts and the wrestling acumen that he had heading into his MMA career, he had a right hand of thunder where it would just stun people, where other fighters don't have that. So Deontay Wilder, with this powerful right hand, the Bronze Bomber, he's got power in his left hand as well. For a 12-round fight, 3 12-minute rounds, 36 minutes of nonstop, one guy going after another guy, you would say that the advantage would lean towards Wilder. But as I've watched each and every one of either of these fighters' fights, whether it's Tyson Fury, whether it's Deontay Wilder, I have noticed Deontay Wilder progress as a boxer. But purely speaking on the boxing side of things, Deontay Wilder is not that great of a boxer. His defense is subpar. His punching, when he tries to land that big shot, becomes wild, looping, and, fortunately for him, Deontay Wilder has not really been caught yet. But I think eventually, if not in this fight, it could eventually happen in another. And when you're facing a real technical boxer, maybe like an Anthony Joshua, that could happen. But with Deontay Wilder, one shot could land and it could be all she wrote for the fight and all she wrote for that fighter that gets knocked out for quite some time. And that is something that Tyson Fury has to be weary of, because in the first fight, Fury, in a 12-round fight that went 12 full rounds, I thought Fury won at least 8, 9, or 10 rounds. At least 8 rounds out of those 12. And that fight went to a decision. So Tyson Fury has to be on his A game, avoiding that big shot, avoiding the ability of Deontay Wilder to headhunt and go after him, and to avoid the fact that Tyson Fury got knocked down and was out cold on the mat in the 12th round of the first fight. Luckily for him, at around 5, he heard the ref say 5. He gets back up to his feet, and the fight continues. Not only did the fight continue, but Tyson Fury landed really big shots of his own to really stake his claim as being a stout fighter within that round. And that is one of the most legendary moments in recent boxing history, and that's one of the most legendary, if not the most legendary moment in Tyson Fury's career. If you're lining up across the ring from Tyson Fury, you got to pay him his respect for that. I mean, he was out cold. Not many of foes have gotten up from that shot from Deontay Wilder, and Tyson Fury did. So you know what you're dealing with if you're Tyson Fury. You know that you're dealing with a powerful puncher, a guy that can hit you one time and put your lights out. And then if you're Deontay Wilder, you know that, hey, I got 12 rounds. I got 36 minutes of playtime in here with this guy, 36 minutes to figure out this puzzle and neutralize him and wear him down. I think that's the approach that Tyson Fury should be prepared for from Deontay Wilder. And furthermore, I think that's the approach that Deontay Wilder should put forth against Tyson Fury. Deontay Wilder cannot go into this fight headhunting and looking for the knockout right out of the gate. I think this fight has to be a strategic, tactical fight where energy cannot be overexerted in this fight with Tyson Fury if you're Deontay Wilder. He missed a lot of shots in the last fight on Fury, and I don't think he can afford to do that again, because this time I think Tyson Fury, dare I say, might be a little bit more ready for this fight than he was the first fight. The first fight, as I mentioned, Tyson Fury went through a tumultuous couple years. He gained a massive amount of weight, was over 400 pounds, was drinking in excess, was smoking in excess, was just really on a downward spiral. Well, he woke up one morning and said, I'm not going to do this to myself anymore. I'm going to go get the help that I need, and I'm going to get my boxing career on track. Luckily for him, he made that choice, because now Tyson Fury, and watching any lead up to this fight, whether it's an interview or anything like that, Tyson Fury looks like he is in the best shape in his entire career, which, you couldn't say that, 3-4 years ago, but now here we sit here and we can say that. We can say that Tyson Fury put forth the effort, the hard work, the determination to get back on track and to get where he needed to be. And the question is now, with Tyson Fury top-notch, Tyson Fury at the peak of his performance level, will that make a difference? Will that make a difference in this fight with Deontay Wilder? I honestly don't know, because when I've watched Deontay Wilder, I've seen improvement, but I do not see him as this defensive genius boxer. I do not see him as a counterpuncher even. Deontay Wilder is a headhunter. He wants to knock you out. In this fight, I don't think that's a great style, and I don't think that's a great matchup. If Deontay Wilder wants to come out of this fight, on the winning end, comes out of this fight on the winning end, you got to go round for round, accumulative punishment, accumulative punches, and really break Tyson Fury down piece by piece without allowing Tyson Fury to just slip and rip, counter and move, which I think Deontay Wilder did a bad job of in the last fight. He let Tyson Fury kind of slip and move and have a little bit too much fun in there. Make this fight nasty. Make this fight tough. Is Deontay Wilder willing to fight nasty and fight tough? So far, he hasn't had to. In the 12-round fight with Fury, as I said, Fury got rocked a few times, whereas Deontay Wilder was just trying to get through that fight and win as many rounds as he could. He wasn't going to go too far toe-to-toe with Fury because he knew that Tyson Fury packs a punch too. And late in that fight, there's a moment where Tyson Fury completely catches Deontay Wilder, and I thought to myself, oh, wow, this guy wants that piece again. He wants another one, and here we are. Here we are. So I'm thankful for the fight, thankful that I get to cover the fight. But as far as a prediction goes, I'm having a real tough time picking Deontay Wilder in this one. And I think it's because of his true inability to fully box the way that he needs to for this particular matchup. Other matchups, he can walk with his hands down, he can land his shots, he can call his shots, but Tyson Fury is a completely different animal. This guy's a lineal heavyweight champion of the world. These are arguably the two best heavyweights in the world today, and you gotta put him out. Whether it's Fury or whether it's Wilder, you gotta step up. You gotta show something to the fans and show the fans why boxing is back, why it is where it is today. Go from there. I'm Ryan Thomas. I believe that Tyson Fury will win this fight. I believe he will win it. I think this fight will come down to a judge's decision, and I don't think they're going to take this one away from Tyson Fury again. I would imagine not. I think someone's O is going to go. And a very interesting dynamic of this fight as well for the fight fans out there. The loser of this fight has 30 days to accept their option of a rematch clause. So we could very well see, no matter the winner, no matter the loser, we could see a rematch of this fight very soon. But ultimately, in my heart of hearts, I do believe that Tyson Fury will get it done. I just feel like he's the more physical, defensive boxer that can miss the shots that Fury's throwing all the time, or that Wilder's throwing all the time. I feel like this is one of those fights that it's going to be a war. It's going to be back and forth. It's going to be one person's up one round, another person's up another round, and around and round we go. But nonetheless, I'm really excited to cover the fight at Amherst Alehouse alongside the Trainwreck Sports crew, the Wrecking crew, including myself. As a part of that Wrecking crew now, it's been a treat. And you can catch this podcast in the future on the Trainwreck Sports Spotify and Apple Podcast. So we're working on that right now, working on some really cool stuff, and we'll have that set straight away. Take care, everybody.